Hello everybody, welcome or welcome back to a new video. My name is Georgia if you are new here. Today I am going to be doing my October wrap up, talking you through all of the books that I've read in October. Not that many books actually, a little bit of a slower reading month for me. We read 6 books in total, 4 physical books, 2 audiobooks, and they were all spooky kind of themed. Either like actual spooky paranormal reads or like thrillers. But anyways, let's just get into them. First book that I read was Bride by Ali Hazelwood. Guys, I was not prepared for how much I loved this book. So this is a paranormal romance between a werewolf and a vampire. We have our vampire Misery and our were-lo. And essentially in this sort of world, werewolves and vampires have been enemies for decades, centuries probably. And essentially these two are put forwards to have an arranged marriage to sort of strengthen or like create an alliance between the weres and the vampires. So they have like a forced arranged marriage for the sake of the vampire and the werewolf community. But then you kind of have like a side plot going on to do with Misery's friend, and then also like another sort of underlying current of like tension, and if there's going to be like an uprising in the were community. I just was not prepared for how much I loved this. This is my favourite Ali Hazelwood book, hands down. I have only read 2 of her books apart from this, but I absolutely loved it. I've never read like a paranormal romance before. Obviously I've read fantasy and like romantasy books, but not with like supernatural creatures in the same way that I feel like this was. But I loved it. I literally ate it up. I loved the tension between the couple. I loved the side plot and like the whole sort of vibes that them being paranormal gave. I will say I'm a little bit iffy now around the word not, and honestly that kind of lives in my head rent free now because I had no clue what was going on. But a good solid read. I did buddy read this with Jenna and Marty as well, and I feel like that just made it even more enjoyable. But I would rate this around about a 4 stars. Then I read My Roommate is a Vampire by Jenna Levine. So this follows our female main character Cassie and our male main character Frederick. So Cassie is looking for a new place to live, and she sees an ad up from Frederick basically advertising this amazing apartment for ridiculously cheap. She thinks it's too good to be true. She goes and checks it out, and the apartment is top tier, immaculate. She of course is a little bit wary, but ends up taking him up on the deal to become his roommate. But when she does, she starts noticing strange things about him, his sleeping habits, his decor, things in his fridge, all kind of things like that. And that is the general premise of this book. Very low stakes, very easy to read, very cute. He is a like 300-400 year old vampire that accidentally becomes a Swiftie, and it was just very easy to read, very cute. And I don't really have anything bad to say about this, but I just didn't love it. It's one of those romances where like, yes, it was cute to read in October, but like it's not going to be one of my all-time favourite books or all-time favourite couples. So I'll probably rate this one around about a 3.25, 3.5. Then I listened to The Wrong Daughter by Dandy Smith. But essentially this book has 2 sisters, Caitlin and Olivia, and one night Olivia goes missing. Caitlin sees her get abducted, and then maybe like 15-16 years later she reappears. But things are a little bit iffy, things aren't quite as they seem, and Caitlin is not convinced that that is her sister that's came back. So you kind of have that timeline, like that unraveling, and then there's a past timeline as well, which follows 2 other people, a brother and a sister, and you're just kind of going through each sort of plot, each timeline, trying to figure out how they're gonna link, what's gonna link them. And yeah, I did enjoy it. I did think it was like a little bit predictable and also pretty long for what it was, but it was an enjoyable read. I would probably give it about a 3. Again, I really struggle with thrillers in finding a thriller that is not predictable or completely unrealistic and stupid. I just really want a thriller that is actually going to freak me out, scare me, have me on the edge of my seat. So if you do have any recommendations, please send them my way. Next up, we have Happy Medium by Sarah Adler. This one follows our female main character, Gretchen. She is essentially a con artist. She is pretending to be a psychic medium. She has her own business where she talks to people's loved ones that have passed. Obviously all fake. She is using them for the money. And basically one of her highest paying, most regular clients recommends her on a job. She basically recommends that Gretchen goes to the farm of one of her friends because there's some spooky things happening there. They think it might be a ghost or some sort of paranormal activity, and it's basically stopping them from selling the farm. So she gets sent there to try and sort the situation out. Obviously, Gretchen is like, don't know what I'm gonna do because I am a fraud, I'm a fake. But when she gets there, we have a very grumpy young man. She thought that he was gonna be like 80 years old, and she is also faced with an actual ghost. So she is not as much of a fraud as she thought. But I really enjoyed this one. It kind of put me in mind of like an Abby Jimenez type book. Like, it was just very cute and I really did enjoy the writing style. It's my first book by this author, and just the plot, the couple, everything. I really did like it. But again, it's one of those books where I'm probably not going to think about it again and would only really recommend around the sort of spooky October, Halloween kind of time. But I did enjoy it. I would probably give this one again like a 3.25. I would just like to say that obviously books like this, yes, I enjoy them, but as I've said, they're probably not going to be like my all-time favourite. So just because I'm rating it like a 3 doesn't mean that it's going to be a bad book or that I didn't enjoy it. It just obviously is not on par with like the other romance books that I read that are literally ingrained in my brain and a part of my soul now. Then I read The Witch is Back by Sophie H. Morgan. This one was probably my least favourite out of all of the spooky sort of reads that I read. I don't know if it was because it was the last one and by this point I was maybe a tiny little bit over it. But basically this follows Emma and Bastian. They are both witches. They had an arranged marriage years ago, but Bastian essentially left and called off the marriage, called off the engagement without ever really telling Emma why. She had very real feelings for him and she's kind of just been left all of these years, and then he turns back up, of course he does, and wants to rekindle things. So you're kind of going through their relationship. It's a second chance, but you don't really get much of them in the past, apart from to kind of unravel why he left in the first place. You obviously do get little bits of witchy romance. You have like her relationship with her family. I don't know, I felt like I kind of tuned out a little bit. I did listen to a good chunk of this on the audiobook, but I felt like I was just tuning out, not really paying attention because I didn't really care that much. I don't know. I have seen a few reviews and comments that it feels like this was written by a man, and I feel like that explains a lot. Obviously it wasn't, but I feel like it would make a lot of sense. I don't know, I just wasn't really vibing with it that much. Like, I didn't love it. It was good for the season, for the time, and obviously gave those witchy vibes, but just wasn't really my favourite. I don't know what I would rate this, because saying like a 2 or a 2.5 or a 2.75 even feels very harsh, but obviously the other ones are like a 3.5 and I enjoyed those considerably more than this book, but I'm still not quite sure on my rating of this one. So, and then the last book that I read was another audiobook. It was The Boyfriend by Frida McFadden, which is her newest release. Honestly guys, I cannot tell you very much about this book at all. I don't remember any of the main characters' names, but basically the female main character starts going on a date with this guy and he's a little bit iffy, if you will. Like, he is hiding things. It's sort of one of those things where it's like, is he who he says he is? Is he too good to be true? Because at the same time, you have a serial killer that is essentially going round dating people and then killing them. So it's like, is he gonna be the killer? Is he not? Then you have this random other guy that she went on a date with that is like a little bit of a stalker. And yeah, it's kind of like about her trying to figure out what's going on with the guy that she's dating, who's the guy that she had a failed date with that is now harassing her. And then you've also got her ex in the mix, who's a police officer on the serial killer case. It was a lot. There was a lot going on, and I don't really recall a lot of it. I feel like with Freida McFadden books, I say this every time, and yet I still continue to read them. But her books are they're gripping, don't get me wrong. I enjoy reading them, and I feel like they are always very fast paced and quick, and I do get through them quickly. But I'm never left shocked or surprised or like trying to work out the pieces, because I feel like a lot of the time going into it, you know what's going to happen, you know the plot, and if you don't end up figuring it out, it's because she throws in some random plot twist that makes zero sense. But yet I read them every time, and this one was actually not like my least favourite. I did enjoy it, I just wasn't left gobsmacked. And obviously I can barely even remember the plot, so it can't have been that well ingrained in my brain. Probably about a 3 stars. But guys, those are all of the books that I read in October. A pretty short reading month, but we are getting into the cozy sort of reads, kickstarting my fall, autumn, winter TBR. I'm very excited for some fantasy reads coming up, some dark academia, a few more thrillers in the coming months, so stay tuned for those. As always, make sure you are following my book Instagram. I am a lot more frequent over on there at updating what I'm reading, thoughts on books, all that good stuff. But thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I will see you in the next one. Bye guys!